Hey, so I had a training this week with Patricia Coglin, and it was phenomenal, phenomenal. And I wrote a post about that earlier, and I wanted to talk about something else that her training made me think. So a lot of what she does is she works in the unconscious, and what it made me think of is like there's actually probably three basic levels of therapy, and each of these levels of therapy have their own models and own parts of models, and each of these levels of therapy also have pros and cons. So I wanted to go through that list today. So think of so I'm going to rank these types of therapy in terms of how impactful they are, right? The first level is psychoeducation. The second level is coping skills. The third level is active listening, and the fourth level is unconscious work. So the first level, right, of psychoeducation. So lots of models use this in big ways and in small ways. For instance, if you do Alcoholics Anonymous, right? A huge part of the model is psychoeducation. They want you to believe their philosophy about life and about addiction. If you look at another model, say emotionally focused therapy, when someone's in pain, right, the idea is you take the person into their pain, into their core pain, and then while they're in their pain, you can reframe their pain. You say, and this is where you need support and comfort. You turn to your partner. So you're asking them, you're telling them, you're educating them that the solution to their pain is in their partner. And so you see it in big ways like in AA, in small ways like in EFT. The cons of this is that it tends to be relatively weak in effectiveness, right? I think that most modern models now say, I think it's just sort of common sense that like insight doesn't really create change. There's the problem we have is not most of the time people know the answer is, they just struggle to do it. So the insight is not the problem. The flip side of that is that if you don't know, the pro is if you don't know what to do, then you spin your wheels, right? So lots of people don't know what the solution to their problem actually is. And so they need some sort of psychoeducation to know which direction to even move into, right? They need a map. If you ever hear people talk about having a map, like that's what that means, right? That they have psychoeducation. And people do need a map because you need to know where to go. The second, so that's the pros and cons of psychoed. The second level of therapy is coping skills, and lots of models use this, right? I think about DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, right? They give people tips. Sort of their tips is their acronym for the four big coping skills that they give people, right? Temperature, pressure, temperature, intense exercise, paired bringing, and systematic relaxation. I think that's what it is. Temperature, intense exercise, paired breathing. I forget what the last one is. Anyway, and the cons of this is that this doesn't usually fix the problem. I remember when I first heard about this, I kind of was just disappointed that so many therapists use this, especially when I work groups at like psych wards. They're all about teaching people coping skills, and I think the weird thing is, if you sort of are a coping skills therapist, you sort of given up on fixing the people's problems, right, or helping them to resolve their issues. You're basically saying, this is a problem, you need to just cope with it for the rest of your life. You can't fix it. You just gotta learn how to cope. So your depression is really, really bad, but if you go for a run, it'll keep you, at your minimum, or it'll balance you back out. But can't resolve the actual depression. And I think the con is it's relatively weak, right? It doesn't really help that many people that often. And it tend to be hard to do, right? Like if you have a client who's depressed, they know that going for a workout will help them. It's hard to stay motivated to do it every day. Even when they feel better, they don't want to do it, you know? Um, so it's a relatively, it doesn't target the actual core problem. Uh, the pro though is that in many ways that's actually more realistic. I think I've evolved and changed, and I'm like, well, if this is the best that we can do, like we want to do what we can, because sometimes we just can't help people, right? We can't resolve the underlying issue. The other problem I think is it's very practical. Sometimes I think we get too theoretical, we get too driven into our models as therapists. So having coping skills is very concrete. Just do this, and when it works for people, it works. The con, again, is that we don't always know when it's going to work. We don't know what's going to work for each person. Another con is there's really no magic here, right? Like there's only like a handful of coping skills, and like you don't really need a therapist to tell you what a coping skill is. Working out, sleeping, meditating, journaling. Like these are all coping skills that most people can know by just like doing a quick Google search. So there's that. The second is active listening. The third is active listening. I think this is actually a more powerful intervention than people realize, especially if you sort of pair it with coping skills, right? But I think it's such an important thing that most therapists actually don't do well. Just having someone actually hear you on a deep level is a very powerful thing. And many times, I've seen this again and again, this is what clients really want and are really asking for, is they just want to be heard, right? That to be heard is enough. So this isn't really I think the con of it is sometimes therapists that I think of as being good therapists, this is the main thing that they do well. And I think that they think that this is everything. It's not everything. You still have the fourth level of therapy. But it is like such a big thing. And I think it's the thing that actually we can offer people that outside people can't, right? Like, I think it's hard to expect your uncle or your aunt or your best friend to really listen to you well. They're emotionally involved. I think it's easier for you to expect a therapist to be well trained to listen to you. Not that we do this, lots of therapists don't do this well. Like, I don't know, maybe like 50%, like a huge number. But I think it's very, very powerful. And then the last level, level 4, is unconscious work. Lots of models do this, right? If you think of like ISTDP, psychodynamic therapies, EMDR and brain spotting, a lot of body work, they all do this sort of stuff. The cons of this are that it's actually really hard to do well, right? It's really easy to screw it up. If you're a psychodynamic therapist, especially, you can misinterpret people's unconscious cues, right? So if someone says something like, I'm not sure what to work on today, right? You're setting your agenda for the session, and you say, what do you want to work on today? Where are we going to go? And they say, I don't know what I want to work on today. You can interpret that as like resistance and pushing to the client, or it might just be that they're feeling hopeless today, or it could be that they just literally don't know what to do and how to use a therapist, and how to read into that well. Other models like EMDR, I think, are harder to mess up, right? You don't have to really interpret stuff in EMDR. People are sort of going through the unconscious process of going through their like past memories and traumas and stuff like that. But it's easy to re-traumatize people. All that pain comes to the surface, and if you don't handle it well, people can really get into pain. But the benefit is that this is the level where you can actually resolve people's problems, right? People will go through EMDR or some sort of psychodynamic therapy or something else, and they'll be like, wow, like, it changed my life. I actually don't feel depressed anymore. I actually don't have those triggers anymore. So the upside is amazing. So what does all this mean, right? We have these 4 levels of therapy: psychoed, coping skills, active listening, and then unconscious work. I think the big thing, which goes back to probably a different article that I wrote, is to be aware of these, to know what your client is asking for, and to have a better understanding of what you can offer people and how you can mitigate the cons while increasing the pros. That's it. Jordan the counselor.